All right, so we're starting a new series at a new location about the weekly portion of the Torah. I've done this before. We've had a series called Insights of the weekly Parashat. Insights are the deeper concepts and ideas that the Torah conveys to us in the many, many stories and mitzvot and the commandments. We've done that in the past. If you're interested, those classes are on the internet. We've also done, many, many years ago, a series called Highlights of the weekly Parashat, which are the main points. So what is different about this series? We're going to go a little bit deeper. And that's why I called it Valuable Lessons and Moral Teachings of the Torah. As the Zohar points out, it would be a big mistake for one to believe that the Torah is only a book of stories, a history book. Even though it does retell somewhat the history of our people, the Zohar says it has various layers, as you may have heard, Pardes, Pshat, Remes, Sod, and Drash, various layers of understanding that is embedded in the text, that unless one really analyzes every verse, learns the Torah with the commentaries, only then will he have a better understanding of what exactly is the message. The Zohar says it would be foolish to believe that all we see in the Torah is what's on the surface, just the story. The stories are important, but there's something beneath the story. Various valuable lessons that are taught to us that we need to adopt throughout our lives. So therefore, whoever has only studied the story didn't really achieve that much, does not know that much about the Torah. And therefore he might even be confused and have a very difficult time in trying to figure out what exactly does the Torah mean, or why such a complex mitzvah, such a complex system of laws. What is this all about? Well, you have to dig a little bit further. Imagine telling somebody how the DNA works. Today we know a little bit more about DNA, but most people do not have a proper, adequate understanding of DNA unless they're into science, unless they've dug into the subject and perhaps seen pictures of what it looks like to understand the complexity of it. So just to tell someone DNA doesn't tell them too much. So let us just say that the Torah has its own DNA in a sense, a very, very structured DNA in the same way, and even more complex, obviously more important than the DNA of our physical bodies, because all we are physical human beings. There's an entire big universe out there. And there's this Torah, of course, that encompasses everything in this universe. And that is something that is very difficult for many people to comprehend if they treat it as, this is a relic of the past that belongs in the museums. For some people, that's where it's in their minds. It belongs in the museum. It doesn't deserve more attention. But we know for us, the Jewish people, it's very valuable. It's an important guide to live by, to learn from, and that is why we review it year after year. And we never stop learning it. Even though we think we know it, there's always something new that we can gain from learning the Parashat. So even though there's, of course, a lot of other valuable Torah teachings, whether it's Halakha and Kabbalah, Midrash, Musar, there's a lot of areas of importance, and everyone, of course, should become familiar with as much as he can according to the amount of time that he has. But this is really the foundation. This is what children begin to learn early on, the basics. And of course, children are not taught at a very deep level, but they're still taught the basics. So Torah is something that the non-Jewish world does not understand for the following reason. When they think of a body of laws, they think of a body of laws that were put together by human beings. The Constitution being an example. It's a body of laws that was put together by human beings. But there's a big difference between the body of law that was put together by human beings and a body of law that was, of course, given to us from Shamayim, from above. Something which is divine, something that is meant to be eternal. And that makes a big difference, because something that is eternal is not supposed to be changed. You will see that the Torah itself specifies clearly and emphasizes, don't dare attempt to change it, to alter, to add, to detract, because this is meant to be for all times, All times, yes, even for the 21st century, where we have satellites and we have all this technology, and people are thinking, well, in the past perhaps, to make fire, to make light, you had to rub stones together. But today it's only a flick of a switch. Maybe today it's permissible on Shabbat. Nobody, people do not understand the meaning of lo ta'aseh kol melacha. What does it mean not to do melacha, work? Is melacha really work? Then why doesn't it say avodah? Avodah is a better translation of work. What's the difference between melacha and avodah? So English doesn't lend itself to properly explain the nuances between these two words. But in Hebrew, there's a world of a difference. Avodah is physical work, and Shabbat is not about just abstaining from physical work. It's about creative work. That's the word melacha, something that is creative, something that we need to abstain from on this day called Shabbat, one day of the week that is a holy day, that is a special day. We want to feel differently about this day. In order for you to feel differently about this day, you have to abstain from 39 categories of creative work. Wow. All of a sudden we're being introduced into a whole different concept. Shabbat is not just a Yom Menucha like we were taught. You're going to have gefilte fish, or you're going to have gondi, depending on your favorite food, of course. It's not about the food only, even though, of course, we enjoy the food on Shabbat. And, of course, this food on Shabbat does not taste the same on Sunday. We all know that. Of course, Shabbat is a special day. But abstaining from work, why not? What if I enjoy work? You follow me? So a lot of people don't have a clear understanding of what the Torah wants from us. Why 613 commandments? God, why not 7? The non-Jews have it easy. They only have 7. Why give us 613? So a lot of people misunderstand Judaism, even Jews. And because of that, they hesitate, they don't go to a class, they're not interested, they're not excited. They just follow because of tradition, they follow because they want to give their parents, who are more or less following, they want to respect them. They're not into it. If they only realize the beauty of it, how much sense it makes, they would of course embrace it, no questions asked. How do I know that? The fact that you have people who are converting to Judaism says something. Why should they convert? A non-Jew has an easier life in some ways. In some ways. I say in some ways because obviously a Jewish life is full of meaning. So once you have meaning and purpose, it of course colors the life in a different way. And it brings a certain amount of spiritual uplifting and happiness and so forth. But in some ways they have it easy. They're enjoying themselves. Go to Hollywood Boulevard now. What is a typical average non-Jew doing now? He's taking a walk, he's going to the movie. He wants to have fun. They don't have this obligation of going to a Shiur Torah. Okay, let's forget about the average individual in Hollywood, but what about congressmen? What about professors who are more intelligent, supposedly, right? Aren't they interested in learning more, in perfecting themselves, in refining their nature? That's not the goal. That's not part of the Constitution of the United States of America, to become a better person. And I'm going to quote you part of the preamble of the Constitution, what exactly it aims to achieve, and how it is not always very successful in that. We have to keep in mind that the Torah is a very important document, not just because it's divine, but because of its ultimate purpose, and that is leho'il la'adam. It is ultimately to benefit mankind, to benefit the Jewish people, of course, to elevate him, so that we should be a mamlechet kohanim vegoy kadosh, that we should be a priestly nation, a holy nation, a light unto the world, an example for others to follow. And if we were to do our job properly, then of course we would elevate not only ourselves, but the entire world. Unfortunately, that has never happened. Partially it did, of course. Partially we had a Bet HaMikdash, we had a temple on 2 occasions. It was, of course, something very, very important. It brought about a certain amount of divinity, holiness, blessing to the world, you can say. But it didn't achieve what it intended to achieve. And that is why we're waiting for Mashiach. Mashiach represents that ultimate tachlit for which the world was created for, that Hashem will reign, right, and everybody will recognize him. But until then, it is not possible to have that clarity, because he wants us to have free will. He wants us to choose. He wants us to make that happen on our own. And if we were to do so, Mashiach, of course, would have come a long time ago. And why is Mashiach so important? Because Mashiach represents the real blueprint for creation. Right now, of course, we're following a blueprint, but it's not a perfect blueprint. Why is it not perfect? Well, just look around. How many wars there are, how many problems, famine, right? This is not a perfect world. Human beings are not perfect because of the evil inclination. So the blueprint that we're following today is not the real blueprint. Hashem has the real blueprint, and that is reserved for when Mashiach comes, when we will see the real purpose and we will have clarity. Everything will make sense to us. The advantage that we have, therefore, with learning the Torah is that it provides us with something called in Hebrew cherut. Cherut means freedom. It's not freedom to necessarily to vote. You know, in some countries, people don't always have freedom, the freedom to vote. Something that we take for granted if you're a citizen. When we talk about freedom, real freedom means cherut mi malach hamavet, cherut mi yetzer hara. It's a freedom that gives us a certain control over ourselves. What kind of control? That we're not completely subjugated to our evil inclination. People, normal human beings, have a weakness. They can easily become subjugated, easily can become a slave, I guess you can say, to the evil inclination, to the Yetzer Hara. How? By forming habits. That's the easiest way. Habits, bad habits. So you're becoming a slave of habit, you're becoming a slave of certain addictions. All of this is Yetzer Hara, the evil inclination. And where does that come from? That comes from the fact that we have a physical body, which is a vessel to the neshama, to the soul. And this physical body is earthly. It comes from the ground, from earth, and it desires earthly things. And therefore, it is tempted, it is easily breakable, frustrated, disappointed, sad, depressed. All those things that we identify as weaknesses, perhaps, or as negative experiences, these are all because of the physical body. So when a person puts a lot of focus on his physical body, he can easily become distressed and sad and depressed and all of that. When one learns Torah and sees the purpose of life, what it's all about, he understands a little bit, in our limited mind, what God expects of us, then he understands that a lot of these things that people are fighting about or sad about is nonsense. It's shtuyot, hevel avalim, vanities. Why worry about it? There's a lot that one could learn that will equip him to better contend with the problems in life. Sheyuchal litmoded yoter tov. In other words, people have a hard time contending with the challenge of poverty. Poverty, the rabbis tell us, is a very, very big challenge. No matter how strong you are, it is very, very challenging. People don't want to ask people for favors. That's human nature. They don't want to beg. It's very, very, very difficult. It's embarrassing. But the more we understand why we're going through this kind of situation, this kind of challenge, it's easier to deal with it, especially when we have the hope that perhaps we will one day overcome this challenge. You mean I can change this situation? Try to tell that to a guy from India who's in a caste called the Untouchables. I don't know how many of you are familiar, but in India there's different caste groups. It's a very rigid system of people living in different social stratums, different social classes. And the very, very low usually cannot marry the very, very high. There are reasons for this, but without elaborating too much about their system, people who are very, very low in class don't always see, especially if they're from India, a way out of it, except perhaps in another lifetime. They do believe, many of them, in reincarnation, which is a topic that is discussed in our Kabbalah as well. We have a portion of the Torah that deals with mystical subjects. One of them is reincarnation. A lot of Jews did not know about this until it was revealed. The printing press came out, Kabbalah was taught in public by the Ari. But before that, a lot of people did not believe in Kabbalah because they didn't see those sources in the Gemara, in the Talmud, in the Torah for sure not. But they forget that the Torah is an abridged book. It cannot contain all this knowledge. So you have Gemara, you have Mishnayot, you have Midrash, which supplements all the details of the stories and of the mitzvot as well, in another book called Midrash. So a lot of knowledge was hidden, a lot of knowledge was not made public for a good reason. One of them was reincarnation. And that's a very important topic in itself because It in itself helps us understand many, many areas that are difficult to comprehend, including the Holocaust, including why people suffer. Reincarnation, yes, there's some connection to a previous lifetime, but that's a whole different topic, and if you're interested, there's some discussion about that I gave years ago, and a topic devoted for that. Why is there a need for reincarnation? But in India, some people have the belief, yes, in another lifetime perhaps I'll have it easier. I have to escape this kind of a situation, but I can't do it now. We believe you can. Not through free will alone. Free will, of course, is something that I'm going to talk about. It's something very special that human beings have that animals don't have. But it's not through free will. You can't just decide, I'm going to be rich, and that's it. I'm going to take 3 jobs, and that's going to make a difference in my bottom line. No, this will not necessarily happen. We firmly believe that the only way a person can change his mazal is a very powerful word, but people misunderstand it too because they think mazal is luck. Mazal means destiny. It means one's mission in life. Yes, even though that mission contains aliyot v'yeridot, ups and downs, and sometimes those yeridot, those downs, are financial downs, one can come out of it. How? By changing the mazal. How? Through prayer. Number 1, through teshuvah. Repentance is number 2, and through ma'asim tovim, through good deeds. These somehow have the power to possibly improve or change the mazal, whether it's a mazal that is limiting one financially, or it's a mazal that is limiting one from not having children. There are couples that have been married for over 20 years and still don't have children. They've tried, they've done everything they can. It's part of their mazal. Why? We don't have the answers to all those questions, and we don't need to have answers to every question. It is enough for us to realize that it is controlled from above, and there's some reason for that. Once we know that there's some reason for it, and we know who to turn to, then we'll do our best. Just like people go to all kinds of doctors if they have a very, very serious illness, and they hopefully don't give up quickly. They try every medicine, they spend the money, they try everything in order to rid themselves of this terrible illness. So we have Hashem. We very much believe in prayer. We believe in connecting to this God because He's the source of all of life. He gave us the life to begin with. Maybe He wants something of us. We don't know. We don't have even a great tzaddik, sage in our generation that we can ask perhaps to orient us a little bit, perhaps give us an idea of what to do. It's difficult. We're almost on our own in this generation, but we do have certain instructions. That we have. And we have to follow those instructions and try our best. And hopefully, as many people in the past have seen miracles, those exist. Hopefully we will too, God willing. But we have to try and we have to believe in it. People who don't believe in it, of course, are not going to get ahead in life. They're going to always fall back and be frustrated and not realize what they're doing wrong and just be full of complaints. So therefore, the mitzvot that we have in the Torah are valuable tools for us to be able to fight the Yetzer Hara, to fight the evil inclinations, to become better people. The mitzvot, therefore, contain in them a certain musar haskel. They contain some valuable lessons, some valuable moral teaching that can help us refine our character, perhaps, depending on the weakness or the characteristic that an individual has that may need refinement. Some people have a tendency towards stinginess, others towards anger, others towards laziness. All of that needs to be dealt with. If we are hopefully expected to be a nation that is a Mamlechet Kohanim V'Goy Kadosh, a priesthood nation that is a holy nation, then we got to do something in order to achieve that. It's not going to happen by itself. People are not born tzaddikim, saints. Yes, some individuals are endowed with a neshama that is purer, that doesn't crave all the vanities in this world. That's true. People have different dispositions, different temperaments. Yes, all of that is true. Different upbringings, different parents. Yes. So therefore people are brought up in different situations. But still, as we will soon see, it is possible even for someone who was born in the worst kind of situation to come out of it and grow up to be a very decent human being, a good father and a devoted husband. You know, you may have heard of the experiences that children who grew up in broken homes have had. What came out of them? What did they become? So there are kids that grew up in a broken home that unfortunately continue to have a broken home themselves. It's very, very sad. But there are some that still, because of the broken home, they're so strong they came out of it. And they've built a beautiful home. Despite the fact that they had all these challenges and against all the odds, nobody was expecting them to be a mofet, a husband a mofet, a great husband, a good example. Nobody was expecting him or her. But we've seen the stories. What would they have that others do not have? We'll talk about that too. But I'll give you a brief introduction to that, because it's a very powerful tool that we all need to know about. And that's called the koach haratzon, the power to want something. And for those of you who lived in Israel, you know Hebrew well, you for sure heard of the saying, En davar omed bifnei haratzon. Nothing stands in the way of willpower. Really? Nothing stands in the way of willpower? I just said before that you can't change the mazal even if you want to take 3 jobs. Yes, but there's a big difference between the mazal that covers finances, who one will marry, the children that he will have. That mazal is difficult to control because you can't control your children when they're adults. Even when they're children, there's so much you can do for them. They're human beings, they're almost independent. You can't really choose your wife 100%. And of course, you end up getting married because you chose to, but it's all from Shammai. People come together because he brings them together. Finances too, it's all mazal. Where does koach haratzon make a difference? Where does our willpower make a difference? In the area of being a better person or not. Are we going to be nice or not? Are we going to be righteous or wicked? Are we going to observe the Torah or not? That's up to us. That's where we have free will. And that's a very big topic in itself. The difference between free will versus predestination. What's predetermined, where we don't have too much say, and where do we have free will that we can make a difference? We can make a difference whether we get angry or not, upset or not, do we yell, curse, God forbid. That's up to us. Nobody from above is going to force us to yell at somebody at the grocery store, at the market, at the work job. Nobody's going to force us to do that. We may have a predisposition. We may be inclined because we have this very, very difficult temperament, but we can control ourselves. So that's where we need the Torah Kedusha. That's where the Torah will help us. The rabbis tell us something that is a little bit hard to understand, but I guess with this introduction it will be easier to understand. If somebody ever tells you, Chochma bagoyim ta'amin, Torah bagoyim al ta'amin. If somebody ever tells you that there is wisdom amongst the non-Jews, believe that. But if somebody ever tells you that they have Torah, don't believe it. What does that mean? Chochma bagoyim, that they have wisdom, yes, there have been many great scientists and philosophers, non-Jews, who have contributed immensely towards improving this world, making it a better place in some ways, technology, various ways. Wisdom, knowledge, there are a lot of non-Jews who are very knowledgeable and wise, but not Torah. A system of laws that can last for all times, that can really make people better, it has never existed and never will. Not if it's made by man. The human being is weak. He has preferences, he has prejudices, he has biases. He may not admit it, but a lot of his thinking, his choices, and the laws that he makes are based on his preferences. And what's going to happen? Thomas Jefferson, George Washington, John Adams, the founders, I guess we can call them the founders of this country, the ones who put together the Constitution, what they had in mind, the people today don't respect, unfortunately. They don't believe that many of those things that were acceptable in the past should be applied today. Times have changed, people have changed. And of course we understand this, that people change. But isn't it sad that the law has to change? And that's why the Constitution of the United States has amendments. I'm going to read you part of the preamble of the Constitution, what they set out to do. It sounds very good, but it's not necessarily going to be implemented fully. In order to form a more perfect union, establish justice, ensure domestic tranquility, provide for the common defense, promote the general welfare, and secure the blessings of liberty to ourselves and our posterity. That's what they had in mind. It's very, very nice. but it doesn't really work. It doesn't last forever. They've had to make amendments. You know that women, once upon a time, did not have the right to vote? But why? Didn't Thomas Jefferson say and write in the Declaration of Independence, all men are created equal? And by the way, why didn't he say all women too? All men are created equal. Even though he meant hopefully all human beings. Well, if he meant all human beings, then what about the black people? Why did he himself had slaves? And you should know, I actually admire him as a president. Thomas Jefferson was a great president, I believe. And I think he really did a lot, and he had definitely noble ideas. But isn't there some contradiction or some degree of hypocrisy between what he wrote, what he said, and what he actually did? But that's what happens in many people's lives. There's a little bit of a hypocrisy or a lot of hypocrisy because not everybody is shalem. Not everyone is really trying to be as best as he can. Why should he? Ask the average individual in Congress, are you trying to be the best you can as a person? Of course. Are you taking classes for it? No. In other words, what are you doing to be a better person? Who says that I have to be a better person? As long as I'm a good person, I don't break the law. That's for them a good person. He doesn't break the law. Do you pay your taxes? Don't ask that question. Yeah. So what happens is with the United States Constitution, which is actually a system that is much better than many, many other laws and systems in the world. And there's obviously a lot of benefits and advantages to having a democracy. But wait a minute, democracy, what kind of a democracy do you want to have? You want to have socialism? That's also a democracy. Why not have capitalism? Of course, I'm not going to get into a whole discussion about the differences between the two, but there are definitely a lot of disadvantages in socialism. Whoever studies this, the difference between capitalism, socialism, communism, it's clear. And all you got to do is test it out, how it did in the various certain countries in the world. Some countries fared pretty well. Denmark, Finland, in some ways, did succeed in some ways. So I'm not here to say which one is better. I'm just pointing out, how do you choose? The Democrats in this country want one system. The Republicans believe in a different system. And if the Republicans are going to be in power, they're going to enact their laws, their philosophies. Once they come down or they lose power, it's going to be the Democrats who are going to enact them. And it's going to be different. It's not going to be the same. Who's right? And we're not going to judge who's right and who's wrong because it could be that it's something in between. And that's why these two parties have to learn to compromise. Because if they sat and worked together, perhaps they would reach something that is good for everyone. Perhaps. But they don't want to do that. Each one thinks he's right. And it's going to be a problem because all the time that's going to change. The laws are going to change, the policy is going to change, the philosophy, the outlook of this country is going to change. People change. People are becoming more liberal. And because of that, marriage is becoming more dysfunctional. All of this affects every aspect of our life because the laws that human beings have created are not perfect. And because they're not perfect, they change. They have to change all the time. And they're never going to be able to succeed in putting together a perfect system because this is man-made. As opposed to the Torah, which is divine, which is eternal, does not need to be changed, cannot be changed and tampered with, which is where the reform movement is mistaken. 100%. The Torah tells you, this book tells you clearly that you cannot touch it, tamper with it. So their excuse is it was man-made. So because they had a meeting once upon a time, we're having a meeting now to change the bylaws. So once they take away the divinity of the book, then they think that they have the right to tamper. You want to make your own religion? Go ahead. But you cannot tamper with the original ideals of what we have, what it was set out to do. Otherwise, you make a mess of it. And that's what has happened. Those people that tampered with it have assimilated to other cultures. They're no longer following the tradition. They no longer abide by it. It doesn't mean anything to them. Those that grew up without it, it's not their fault. They have been deprived of a good Jewish education, therefore they don't know what this is. They can't identify with this. So what happened in this country, in this particular country as an example, the United States, is that even though there's been a lot of technological advances and there's been a lot of good things happening here, morally, this country is set back. Now, it is my belief that one of the reasons why this country is set back morally is because they evicted someone. You know who they evicted? It's not that the landlord evicted the tenant. It's the American people, a lot of them evicted God from the schools. You can't teach about God and religion in school. It's against the law. You have to separate church from state. Now, I understand the need to do that. Let's say I agree that they need to do that. Let's say. But to completely remove him? Okay. You don't believe in him? All right. Why do you keep in God we trust and the money? You don't want God mentioned in the school. You don't want to teach about God and religion in the school. Then why are you keeping in God we trust on the money? On the penny even? I'll tell you why. Because you believe in the money. And that's your God. People don't think about it. Why did they leave the God we trust in their money? Why? It doesn't make sense. They believe that it should be removed from everything that is government owned. Right? To separate church from state. They want to leave it in the money. Because the money has become their God, not religion. So in that area of religion, even though they are Christians and we're Jewish, it makes no difference, because if everybody followed their faith properly and would be guided by a system of law that is divine, I think, of course, this world will be a better place. Even though people will come and say, well, once upon a time, Rabbi, you're forgetting the Catholic Church had tremendous power and they killed people in the name of God. Just like many people of the Islam religion do. So is religion really the answer? Obviously, one cannot go back in time and try to figure out what happened then, because we're right now living in a different time. So all I can say is now, not back then. Back then, obviously, people had different ideas, different philosophies, and they were willing to kill. They were willing to persecute. They were willing to create an inquisition if you did not convert to Christianity. So it's hard to go back in time because people were different, life was different. So I'm only talking about now today. Today, there's a need, there's a real need for people to fill their lives with more spirituality. Let's call it spirituality, not religion. God, spirituality, there's something divine that He wants from us. Life is not only about money and about vacations and having a good time, and before you know it, it's over. Come on, figure it out. Think a little bit about what life is all about. So this is missing in this country, and because of that, what's left? Money. Worship money. And because that is what is being worshipped the most, there's a lot of problems in the chevra, as we call it in Hebrew, in the society. All right, so we all understand that there's a need for laws. So what kind of laws are we going to enact? Law and order is something that everybody's familiar with. We need to have law and order. I mean, in the end, laws are important. We do agree with them, but do we need God's laws? Or is it enough to have just law and order? So I said before that human beings cannot create a perfect system. What I meant by that was, yes, it will not be perfect, but it's better than nothing. You need to have law and order. You need to have a justice system. You need to have jails, unfortunately. You need to have some system, some. Otherwise, you have anarchy. Anarchy, you don't want to have anarchy. If you remember the LA riots, you almost had a little bit of a taste of anarchy. So you don't want to have anarchy. So you want to have laws. But you'll be surprised, there are people who say, no, I don't want to live by any laws. You really don't want to live by any laws? I mean, even animals have laws. Do you know that animals have certain rules? Have you ever heard of an animal being territorial? Do you know how an animal decides that this place, this tree, this location belongs to me, whether it's a lion or a tiger? Either by making scratches on the tree with its claws or by urine. And when another wild animal crosses there, hopefully it will leave, unless that other animal has a lot of chutzpah and it wants to take over. But usually animals recognize certain things. One of them is territory. Especially those that are very territorial, you get into their territory, it's very dangerous. You don't want to mess with them. If you've studied a little bit about wild animals, the ones that come to my mind are hyenas and wolves. There's a certain hierarchy. There's a dominant male, or with hyenas, the female, a dominant animal that leads the whole family, the whole group. There are rules that include some degree of submission. If you're not submissive to the one who's more powerful, you're going to get killed, you're going to get hurt, you're going to be driven out from the clan. You have competition between animals to mate. two males competing for the female. And you think that's only happens amongst lions? It happens even amongst walruses. If you know what a walrus is? Even amongst animals that you never thought of. Similar rules exist across the animal kingdom. Basic rules. But these rules come from where? They come from instinct. Instinct, it's like a chip. In them, they have a chip, and it works by itself. They don't have free will. So by instinct, they're going to give up if they see that other animal is more powerful than they are. But we have free will. And where does that free will come from? So in the beginning, Parashat Bereshit, we learned that Hashem created man B'Tselem Elokim, in the image of God. People misunderstand the image of God. God has an image. Not that He has an image. You have to learn it with the commentaries. The commentaries are going to tell you it means with the ability lehavinu lehaskil, with the ability to comprehend, to discern, to figure out. Really, He has all that? Yes, we know that. We have the ability to figure out. Not only algebra, not only scientific formula, we actually were given the ability to figure out that He exists. And that not everybody wants to admit. But we do have that ability. We have the ability if mitbonenim, if you meditate and you contemplate and you ponder the creation, you will be able, hopefully through that power that you have in your soul, the neshama, to know Him. Just to know that He exists. Otherwise, why should He expect you to know Him? Just because your father told you, that's not enough. You have to on your own be able to figure out, and you have the power to do so through your free will. How? With the power of lehavinu lehaskil. Man has the ability, and he doesn't have to have a 210 IQ. Yes, a lot of people are very smart, very high IQ, but they still don't believe in God. Because they're focused in something else. It depends where you want to be focused. But we have the ability to be able to figure out we made a mistake, to admit it. Are we going to admit it or not? It's up to us. So we have the ability to do so, including to recognize that there is a creator, and to choose right from wrong. Where does that come from? It comes from our neshama, our soul. It comes from our conscience, which is also part of our neshama. It comes also from, as I said, from contemplating the creation, analyzing it, taking the time to think about life, and number three, it comes from education. A lot of people didn't take the time, didn't go meditate in the forest. Right? They didn't think about it, so where are they going to be taught these things? Education. That's why education makes a difference. What school the kids are going to go to is going to make a world of a difference. The school is going to make the difference. The friends are going to make the difference. The parents don't spend so much time with their kids as we would love to. So we are hoping that the teacher is wise, caring, and he's informative, and he's equipped to teach our children. The problem is that every year the teacher changes. We don't have one teacher. In the past, they had one teacher for a number of years. Now, every year is another grade, another teacher. But still, we're hoping that the school is a good school, good teachers, good principal, that the kids will have a good and positive, healthy environment to grow up with. And if not, what a waste. Because we're hampering them, we're limiting their choices. When they become adults, they're going to lean towards what those books taught them, that they came from a monkey. Yeah, that's what they learn in public school. So how can we expect the average human being who grows up going to a public school where they teach about evolution to be able to think about God? It's too much for him. He really has to be unemployed, perhaps, without a job to take the time. Okay, what am I doing here? Why did God put me here? Well, wait a minute, is there a God or not? How did I land here? Where did I come from? Not everybody wants to think, especially when they're busy with the latest gadget, the internet, Facebook, and all these things. By the way, I forgot to tell you, the reason why nobody's complaining about in God we trust on the money today is because today we have credit cards. So they got rid of the in God we trust. You're no longer using cash because you're using the credit card. You don't have to deal with, it says in God we trust. But anyway, the average individual, Jew or non-Jew, if he's going to go to a public school, he's not going to have the time to think about, wait a minute, why wasn't I taught this? This doesn't make sense. Some do, but the majority does not. The evil inclination has a powerful army to distract us, to keep us busy. Enjoy yourself, go to Disneyland, go to SeaWorld, go hiking. You only live once, they tell you. They don't know about reincarnation. You only live once, there's no life after death. This is what they were taught in school, so they're not motivated in any way to stop and think. But if they did, they would realize that what God expects of us, Jew or non-Jew, of the human being, is to emulate Him. La'ametz et midotav, to adopt His attributes, His qualities. What are they? Well, the easy ones to remember are to be giving, to give. Hashem gives, Hashem is kind. To be compassionate and to be forgiving. These are the easy ones to remember. Forgiving? What's that all about? That means that if you ever get into a fight with your wife, with your husband, forgiving is something very special. It can heal the relationship. Some people never learned what it means to be forgiving. The Jew learns about it because he learns about Rosh Hashanah and Kippur. He asks Hashem to forgive him. You're asking me to forgive you. Have you forgiven your spouse? Have you forgiven your neighbor, your co-worker, the guy you insulted at the synagogue the other day? Have you asked forgiveness from him? In other words, not everybody has these thoughts because they don't stop to think about the midot, the qualities of Hashem. But if we were to look at His midot, that would help us, even without a solid education, that this is what we can achieve. So where do the problems begin? So I'm talking mostly now about the Jewish people. We've had trouble in the past, we still have trouble now. And the one to blame, of course, is the Yetzer Hara. It's easy to blame the evil inclination, but it's not fair to do that, because if we just blame the evil inclination, then there's no need for prophets rebuking us, there's no need for Hashem coming after us. In the end, we are to blame because we have, as I just said, the power to overcome the Yetzer Hara. How? If we learn the Torah. But we're not learning the Torah, so where are we going to get the power? So comes along one prophet that says, I don't understand these people. Yada shor koneu v'chamor evus be'alav. You remember those words? How is it that an ox knows his master? How is it that a donkey knows who feeds him, who gives him to drink? How come the Jewish people don't pay attention and realize who their master is, who provides for them and who took care of them? Doesn't make sense. How come the animal knows? So you can say, well, the animal has an instinct. Yeah, but you're higher than an animal. You're on a level where you can know him. You're close to him. You have a soul that is from him, that is divine. You should know better. So how come? And the simple answer is because one does not learn Torah. The reason I say that that's the simple answer, because if there was at least a regular learning of Torah, at the very least one would be constantly reminded. He would be looking himself at the mirror. Oh, I'm not such a perfect individual. It doesn't mean it's enough. A lot of people learn a lot of Torah and they're crooks. They steal. They cheat people. They lie, even though they learn a lot of Torah. How could this happen? People ask me this question all the time. Rabbi, how does it happen? I know this guy, he's very religious, and he's the biggest crook in town. How is it possible? Yes, he has a weakness for money, which many people do. Just because he learns Torah, it's not a guarantee. We're not angels, we're human beings. The best of the best have fallen in all kinds of challenges and temptations. The best of the best. Some people fall with money, some people fall with illicit relationships, all kinds of situations. But if we don't start by looking at the manual of instructions, then this sophisticated equipment that we just bought ourselves, whether it's a computer or a wash machine, it may break down if we don't know how to use it. We're going to hopefully read the manual of instructions if it's sophisticated. The human being is much more sophisticated than a wash machine. So where's the Horaot Yatzran? Where's the manual of instructions? In the Torah. So we're lucky. Hashem gave us a guide and a source from where we can draw tremendous strength to do tremendous battle. A battle hopefully that will win against the Yetzer Hara. All right. So comes along the Jew and says, finally, I understand that you were right, Rabbi, the Torah is important, but I don't understand the mitzvot. The mitzvot don't make sense to me. Okay, we got ahead. He doesn't understand the mitzvot, but he accepts the fact God created the world, God gave us the Torah. He doesn't understand. First of all, who says you have to understand everything? But I'll try to nonetheless explain a little bit the rationale for the various mitzvot that appear to be complex. We must keep in mind that some mitzvot make sense. Kapet avicha v'timecha, honor your parents. We have to be grateful to them. We want our children to be grateful to us. We want them to be respectful to us. So we want to respect our parents. This makes sense. Everybody should be able to figure this one out. But then there are chukim. Chukim are those laws that are decrees. They don't make sense. They're not rational. What about those? We are limited. It is not possible for us to understand every single law because we know that the human being, as smart as he is, cannot understand everything there is. Try to teach a cat how to fix a car. Mechanics. I give you 10 years. You want 20? Give you 20 years. You'll never succeed in doing that. It's not within the capacity of the brain of a cat to learn mechanics, to learn how a car functions. The human being should not think that he's much smarter than a cat. He's smarter, of course, but he can't understand everything there is. It's just too much for him. We don't live long enough to be able to figure out everything there is. So it's not possible for us to know everything that Hashem had in mind. Some of them are very, very complex. And that is why Hashem did not put all the reasons for the mitzvot in the Torah. One of those reasons is because it's too complex. But there are also additional reasons. Another reason why Hashem did not want us to know the reasons for the mitzvot, because somebody might actually come and say, well, this doesn't apply to me. You know who did that? Shlomo HaMelech. Solomon, who was the wisest man, says, the Torah says not to take too many wives. It's okay. What the Torah says may happen to a king won't happen to me. And it happened to him. It was not very good that he took too many wives. He suffered as a result. People might think that they're smarter than the Torah. Oh, this doesn't apply nowadays. It applied back then, as I said in the beginning. It still applies. Don't think that you're smarter. But the main idea behind it, the reason why Hashem conceals the reasons of the mitzvot is as follows. If Hashem were to tell us the reason, we would do it for the reason. Oh, you know why you can't eat pork? It's not healthy for you. Even the doctors say that. That's not the reason, by the way. If the Torah really was concerned about our health, it would tell us, in addition to other things, be very watchful and careful with your health. It doesn't say that about the non-kosher food, the dietary laws. It's a hook. Rabbis add to that, don't say, oh, I can't stand pork, or I can't stand oysters or octopus. You know, there's a lot of foods that you'll be surprised in different countries in the world that are really disgusting, but people like it. Some people eat frog legs with coconut milk. And in the Philippines they have a food called balot, which is an egg where the chick is already fertilized and developing, semi-developed, not completely, it's still not alive. They eat it. I'm not even talking about monkey brain and rats and all these things. So you might say, ugh, for sure I won't eat those things. Those things are disgusting. The Rabbi says, don't say that you don't eat them because they're disgusting. Just say, they may be okay, but what should I do? God forbids them for me. Why should you say it that way? In this way you maintain your connection with Him and not with a reason. Because once you give a reason, then that's going to take away from the connection that you're supposed to have with God. Hashem says, I want you to have a connection with me. Constant connection. I'm the one that told you about it. I want you to trust in me. Once you start giving explanations, and it's okay to give some explanations in order for us to better understand, but we should always be prepared to say, this is just partially the reason. There are other reasons too. But whenever somebody asks me as an example about why did God forbid me to eat ostrich or some other unclean bird, I'll just tell him, because He knows better. He created the ostrich. He said so. That's what I tell him. He said so. Isn't that enough? He said so. You really have to know the why for everything? Yeah. So there's a lot of things that we don't know. Men can still not figure out their wives, right? If you're married. Yeah. No matter, even if you're 45 years married, you won't be able to figure out the wife. And the wife won't be able to figure out her husband too. You can be married for a long time. We just are different natures and we can't figure it out. It doesn't mean you can't figure out entirely. There's a lot of books, by the way, that talk about it. And of course, the rabbis teach us a little bit about it. There are things that we can learn about the differences between men and women. But, there's still things that we may never be able to comprehend. That's just because the natures are different. So we're coming to Parashat Mishpatim. All of that was just an introduction. So Parashat Mishpatim, Am Yisrael, the Jewish nation, left Egypt, and they're so excited. They hear the voice of Hashem, they witness it, and they say, Na'aseh v'nishma. We're prepared to do so. We're prepared to do and to listen. Wow. Usually you want to hear first and then do. No, they said, Na'aseh v'nishma. We'll first do and then we'll listen. So there's a lot of explanations as to why they said first Na'aseh and then Nishma, we will hear. Don't you want to hear first? Are you sure you want to do it? So part of the reason of what they're saying is Nishma means that we're accepting upon ourselves, we're committing future generations for this. They can't back out of this. So Na'aseh v'nishma v'nashmi'a. To future generations, we're going to educate them, we're going to let them know why. Because we realize that what we saw, they may no longer see. In color, 3 dimensions. What they experienced, the miracles, firsthand, we don't see that today. We see miracles in a different way. But they saw something and they were convinced and they were smart. And by the way, they were very stubborn too. You know that, right? The Jews are very stubborn. So if a smart people, a stubborn nation, they said, we're going along with this, that means they saw something that is true. And they said, we're committed and we're committing our kids, our future generations to this too. And that's a very important part because nobody in the future can ever say, I don't want to belong to this club. If he's born to a Jewish mother, he's Jewish. That's it. You're into it and you're accountable. You will be held accountable if you don't follow the law. You can't say, I don't want to belong to this club. Some, unfortunately, did choose to walk out. But they're still Jewish, they're still held accountable, even though they're not observing. So we said, Na'aseh v'nishma, we're committing that our children will follow this as well. Okay, then what's missing? What's missing is that a lot of the people that are committed to it hesitate. Hesitate? Yeah. They're committed, they believe in this, they definitely want to observe the mitzvot, but they hesitate. They're not, when I say hesitate, I meant that they have certain hesitations because certain things are not clear to them, let's say. Because they're not very clear about certain things, they have a hard time with it. Does this really apply today? Does this really mean what it says? It's heavy upon them. Why is it heavy? Why shouldn't it be something that you're excited about? Just like our forefathers were. What's missing here? Why are you hesitant? And I have a question for those people who are hesitant. If you go to your doctor and he prescribes some medication, some pills, are you going to listen? Yes. Why? Just because he's wearing a white gown and he has his graduation paper on the wall? You know, he may have had a D- in class. He may have been one of the poorest achievers in his class. He passed barely. He's wearing a white gown and he scribbles on a piece of paper. Him you believe fully. You don't hesitate. You're putting something in your mouth. You take a flight from here to New York or Israel. You trust the pilot? You don't hesitate? How come you trust the pilot? How come you trust the doctor and you don't trust God? There's a problem with a lot of people who are committed and they are hesitant and they feel a certain weight is because they don't have enough trust that this is really good for you. This is really for your own good, for your benefit. Take it. I'm telling you, it's great. They hesitate. They feel it's too heavy. Their weakness is in their emunah and bitachon in Hashem. People who are committed, remember they're committed, they're following it, they understand a little bit of it, but it's heavy for them. So what do they need to be convinced of it? They have to learn Torah. We're back to square one. If they don't learn, they won't see the beauty of it. They won't understand how this is really important, how it's to their benefit. In talking about mitzvot, we must remember one thing, that even though some of them are not easy for us to understand, there's 2 types nonetheless. One is ben adam lamakom and one is ben adam lechavero. One is a mitzvah, a commandment that pertains to our relationship between our fellow Jews. One is between us and Hashem. When we put on tefillin, we're observing a mitzvah ben adam lamakom. When we do acts of kindness and tzedakah and so forth, lend money, then we're fulfilling a mitzvah ben adam lechavero. So there's different kinds of mitzvot. It's important to keep this in mind because these mitzvot do help create a system that is fair by us. And why do I emphasize fair? Because a lot of people in the non-Jewish world, the reason why they decided to be a socialist and not a capitalist is because it's not fair that this guy has $2 billion, not million, $1 billion, and there are people like that who have billions of dollars. And there are people who are starving, who don't own their own home, struggling. It's not fair. You follow me? They have noticed, a lot of non-Jews have noticed what they consider a lack of fairness. But wait a minute, this exists amongst the Jewish people too. There is very wealthy Jews, and there are some that are not so wealthy. I know some people are going to complain even though they're Jewish, but the Torah tells us there's a reason for it. That is why we have certain mitzvot for it, to deal with this area of what only appears to be, something is not fair. It is very fair, because everything Hashem did is perfect. What we do is not perfect, but what He did, and He made this man, He made the poor man, He made the rich man, He made it perfect. It needs to be like that. Why? Again, we don't know, but it needs to be. How are we going to deal with it? Oh, we're going to have mitzvot. We're going to have mitzvot that are going to handle this apparent different type of stratum, I guess you can call it, or category in wealth and poverty. We're going to deal with it in some way or another. The reason why the non-Jewish world is going to have a problem with it and they're going to try to figure out a way to correct it through laws is because they're only dealing with it externally. Physically, externally, this guy has more money in his bank account, he has a bigger house, and he doesn't. So we got to create a system of welfare, all kinds of systems where they try to even out society. It doesn't work. You should know, socialism and communism, they slow down the economy. That's one of their weaknesses. Capitalism is in some ways, I guess, stronger in this particular area. I'm not right now going to compare them both, but each one has their weaknesses. They're trying. They won't succeed because they're dealing with it externally, external laws. Judaism doesn't deal with it externally. Judaism is going to deal with it internally. Our laws, our mitzvot, there are laws, are going to deal with the human being. You're going to become a better human being. You're going to be able to solve a lot of problems externally too. You're going to have beracha. Just look at Parashat Bechukotai. It's very, very simple. You follow the Torah, the Jewish nation, you're going to have everything perfect. The economy, military, weather, everything is going to cooperate. I've told a lot of people that the fact that we have bugs in fruits and vegetables is not a good sign. Why should there be bugs? Why do we have to put some of those fruits and vegetables in soap, especially in Israel, in areas where there's a lot of humidity? People haven't eaten strawberries in a long time because of those little aphids and bugs that crawl there that you can't eat, right? Unless you're Chinese and you want to eat bugs. We don't eat those things. Yeah, so it's a problem. It's not a blessing. If there are bugs, that means it's infested. Infestation, whether it's rats or bugs, is a problem. This year, Baruch Hashem, they're getting a lot of rain. Okay, but sometimes they don't. So a Jew is told to keep his antennas high. If something is wrong, that means you're doing something wrong. If you follow the Torah, you will be adopting laws that are internal, that will make you a better person, a better friend, a better husband, a stronger individual. And that will, of course, take care of the external problems as well. If you don't do so, you're going to fail. The non-Jewish world does not have internal laws, as I said earlier, only external, law and order. And that is why the human beings in many, many societies have failed. Divorces, murders, crime, prostitution, rampant, a lot more than in our society because they don't have internal laws. The mitzvot are internal. All right, now once we're talking about internal laws, we must realize that there's a certain order. What comes first? Rabbis tell us, derech eretz kadma laTorah. There are certain rules that come before other rules. What's derech eretz? Proper human behavior. Laws ben adam lechavero are going to come before ben adam lemakom. Meaning what? Parashat Mishpatim. Parashat Mishpatim is all of a sudden we are bombarded with many, many mitzvot, laws ben adam lechavero. All the korbanot and sacrifices, all the many, many mitzvot ben adam lemakom is later on in the Torah. Right now, Mishpatim, right after Matan Torah, right after Parashat Yitro, we get a whole bunch of mitzvot ben adam lechavero. Why derech eretz kadma laTorah? We need to have those laws first. And the question is, why do they really have to be first? Remember the story with Shammai and Hillel? There was a convert, somebody who wanted to convert that came to Shammai. Shammai was a very strict man. Teach me the entire Torah in one condition while I'm standing on one foot. In other words, just like this. Tell it to me quickly. Like we say in Hebrew, chick-chack. Quickly, I want to be converted, but you teach me the whole Torah. So Shammai was strict. He took his stick and he says, get out of here. I don't want to deal with you. He went to Hillel. Hillel was known as a very compassionate person, very sensitive individual, very caring, patient. Hillel, please, teach me a regel echad. I want to convert, but on condition you teach me while I'm standing on one foot. Hillel says, no problem, I can do that. Ve'afta l'reacha kamocha. Love thy friend as you care about yourself. Ze kol haTorah kula, that's the entire Torah. The rest is details on how to fulfill that mitzvah. Wait a minute, who's right, Hillel or Shammai? They're both right. What did they do? Shammai was telling the non-Jew, listen, there are no shortcuts. You want to learn Torah, you want to grow to be a good person, you have to deal with it properly, step by step. There are no shortcuts to be a good person. Hillel had a different attitude. Not that Hillel didn't agree with Shammai. Of course there are no shortcuts. But Hillel was telling him, listen, there is a springboard, yesh keresh kfitza. That's the springboard. It's called V'afta l'reacha kamocha. If you are strong in this area of human relationships, the rest will be easy. If you're going to be nice to people, you're going to be able to use that as a springboard to observe the mitzvot with Hashem as well. You care about human beings, you have no problem caring about God. You can't care about God and not care about His children. It's impossible. If you don't care about God's children, you don't care about God. You're being disrespectful. He made them. You have to care about all human beings. That's the whole story of Yonah and Nineveh. Hashem says, I made these people. You don't care about them, Yonah? You don't want to go and help them? That's part of the lesson of the story of Yonah and Nineveh. Hashem says, I care about everyone, Jew and non-Jew. I want people to live. I don't want the Rasha to die. I want him to return to me. All right? So in order to do that, we have to have a springboard. The springboard is mitzvot ben adam lechavero. So the question I would ask next is then why don't we start with V'afta l'reacha kamocha now in Parashat Mishpatim? Why wait till Parashat Kedoshim to tell us later on V'afta l'reacha kamocha? People have to realize that V'afta l'reacha kamocha is really a goal. You can't start with expecting somebody to like another one as much as he likes himself. Care about him as much as you care about yourself. You have to teach him to be sensitive to another. That is why when we ask HaKadosh Baruch Hu, help us by purifying our heart. What are we asking? We're asking Hashem to help us with Kedusha, with holiness, with purity. Because there's two kinds of purity. One that we will achieve by observing the mitzvot, they will purify us. One that we need to have to begin with. We need Hashem's help. We need to have some purity. That purity is called cheshek. It's called desire. Ani rotzeh, ani mitlahev. I want to do this mitzvah. Not everybody's excited to wake up in the morning to go to Shacharit and pray. Where are we going to take that cheshek, that desire? From holiness. Where is that holiness going to come from? From ratzon. Remember I said earlier? You have to want. If you want, then Hashem will help you. You will be able to ask Hashem for help, and He will help because you're helping yourself. So the first initial step of Kedusha, the cheshek, has to come from a real, genuine will. So in order to accomplish all of that, Hashem gives us all these mitzvot to prepare our sensitivity. To prepare our sensitivity to be closer to Him, to be closer to another Jew. And therefore He gives us the following mitzvot. I'm only going to cover 3 real quickly because the time is getting late. We have the mitzvah of Eved Ivri in this parasha. We have the mitzvah of Azov Ta'azov Imo. We have the mitzvah of not taking a ribit. Briefly, each one of those. Eved Ivri is very interesting. The guy stole and he's sold into slavery. He's not sent to jail. We don't want to have a jail full of people. We want to rehabilitate this guy. He stole. He went against Lo Tahmod, do not to covet. Now he's going to be sold for a number of years, not forever. He's going to learn from his master, who's going to be very sensitive to him. The master is going to take care of him. He's going to take care of the man's wife and children if he has. He's going to treat him as an equal. Wow. That's something he didn't know. He was a thief. That means he didn't care about somebody else's possessions. So this is a training session. Being sold into slavery for a number of years is a training session to teach this man sensitivity. You look at this, Eved Ivri, slavery, Jewish style, to learn how to be a better, a more caring, sensitive person. Azov Ta'azov Imo, you see your enemy's donkey overloaded. Help him.
Not because the animal is in pain. You want to help your enemy because if you help your enemy in his time of need, that's going to take away the enmity, the hatred between the two of you. That's why it says Azov ta'azov imo. Azov means to let go. Why doesn't it say Azorlo? It doesn't say help him. It uses the language of let go. Let go of what? Let go of the packages? No, let go of your enmity. Help this guy just so you can overcome your evil inclination, so you can have that hatred leave you. You don't want to be in this situation forever, hating somebody. The Bet HaMikdash was destroyed for one reason, that even if the two people went to court, they never made up. The judges say he's right and he's wrong. They stayed enemies. What did you accomplish? Make peace between them. Let them embrace, shake hands, do something. If that doesn't happen, the enmity remains. Help your enemy. Today we don't have necessarily donkeys, but we have a car with a flat tire. At 1 o'clock in the morning, you see, oh, that guy, good for him. Let him wait for the AAA. No, this is your opportunity. This is your opportunity to let go of your enmity, to be a better person. And then we have number 3, ribit, the prohibition of ribit. You're going to lend a guy money. I'm talking about right now for a bar mitzvah. I'm not talking about business transactions, which is a whole different idea, business loans. He needs a favor, he needs $2,000 to make a brit milah, whatever. Don't charge interest, otherwise you're not doing him a favor, you're doing yourself a favor by becoming richer through charging him interest. Why did Hashem give you money to begin with? Remember we talked about poverty, rich and poor? There's a reason why Hashem made some people rich, why Hashem made some people have more money. One of the reasons is because you're going to be a lender sometimes. You're going to be a giver, you're going to give tzedakah, that's going to be part of your mission. And that guy has to be on the receiving end, for whatever reason. This is your chance to learn to help, to learn to give. And, of course, not to charge interest while you're doing it. If you charge interest, then you're defeating the whole purpose. Gemilut chasadim is a lot greater than tzedakah. You're helping the guy not only with money, helping the guy by giving him attention, by dealing with him on all kinds of levels, not just money. So if a person charges interest, he's defeating the whole purpose of what the Torah wants to do, and that is make us a more sensitive and kinder nation. So we see from all of these mitzvot as examples that Hashem wants us to be a better people. When we say that Hashem wanted to be mizakeh, He wanted us to have many merits. Those merits are also called zikuch. Lezakot means to purify. Not only that we should have many merits in the world to come, but that we should have a more pure soul. Lezakech otanu. That is why He gave us so many mitzvot. The mitzvot make us into a holy nation. In our generation, of course, we have a tremendous responsibility to immerse yourself as much as possible in Gemilut Chasadim, in charity, because we have to get rid of that baseless hatred that brought about the destruction of the Bet HaMikdash, the Sinat Chinam. And that is why Hashem raised the standard of living of this generation before Mashiach comes to enable us to fulfill this mitzvah as best as possible. To be kind, to be sensitive to another Jew. Hashem made airplanes that Jews can come from Israel here in 15 hours. What for? So that we can help a Jew marry off his child, especially if we are able to. Why not? Why does you take the money to you to the grave? Hashem gave us money for a good reason, not just to pay our bills, but to help each other. So we see that many of these mitzvot, the common denominator is that B'ezrat Hashem, by fulfilling them, we will become better people and will become a nation that is a holy nation, an Am Kadosh L'Shem. Thank you.